Good afternoon. Welcome. Special gold star for coming out on a hot day like this, right? It's a test. It's a test of our resolve. Up to this point, we've been looking at texts from the Mea Shiloach, the writings of Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Lehner, and I can be incredibly smart and tell you he born in 1801, died in 1854 in a little town called Ishbitz, and one of the most influential of all the great Hasidic writers, and also one of the more popular, but people are not all that much into opening the book and learning what he says for some strange reason, because he's not the more complicated of the great Hasidic rabbis to learn. He's also on the shorter side, right? A lot of them go on for volumes and volumes. This is pretty straightforward and relatively short. What we've been doing in the last couple of sessions is looking at what he suggests is the focus of each month based upon the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and the Zohar, telling us things like what is a verse in the Bible that is going to help us focus on the content or the meaning and the feeling of the month, right? So that's something we did for at least 3, maybe 4 more sessions. And here we're going to read directly from 2 of the great Hasidic masters, talking about the month of Elul. The handout that I've given is a almost complete translation. If you want the Hebrew text, I do have that as well. I'm trying to be a little bit economical and ecologically whatever, and not print too many things. If you want to do the Hebrew directly, we can do this. One of the sources I can only get you in the Rashi script. The other I can get you easily in block letters. Work on your Hebrew, folks. It is an important thing to do. Before we start, the 3 cardinal rules, right? The stars are just stars. They align only from our point of view at our particular point in time. The stars that form the constellation Leo, for example, ain't got nothing to do with the line and have no power of their own. It helps us understand things. Astrology, or what we call astrology, is for advice and understanding only. It's not going to tell you, marry this guy, go into that business. It'll help you understand yourself, and it'll help you understand others. And the real big one is we are talking about the Hebrew months exclusively. So for many of us, that's going to be a big step, that I am not a Leo, I am a different month. Right? When you come to the definition, you've got to go to the internet and look up what your Hebrew birthday is, and it can be easily looked up, and then we can start. What we're looking at here is 2 of the great Hasidic masters talking about the subject, and most of the months are covered, not all. The months that are most difficult to find something about are Elul, last month of the year, and Tishrei, the first month of the year, because they're all preoccupied with the big subjects of the time. Repentance, starting a new year. So they don't have that much space or time to get into things that I certainly find interesting. We're going to leave aside all the lists and all the attempts at precision and focus and say, yeah, this is now going to be the month of Elul starting in a day or 2 days' time. Here's what we're looking at. We're going to look at the month of Elul in general, and this is what I call a reading. If you're familiar with astrology of any sort, you go to an astrologer, you go to the internet, and there are programs that will do this for you for nothing. You find out exactly what your time, date of birth is, where you were born, and you look at the various star charts, and you can produce a list of information about yourself, right? Here we're not looking at any sort of precision in that area at all. And I call this a reading because it is simply that. We're opening two of the great Hasidic rabbis, and we're going to start with the son and then the father, and then we're going to read together and we'll see what we can learn from it. There's no obligation to take anything away from this, but it should be of interest and help going into the month of Elul, and it should be of interest, help, and value if you happen to have been born in this particular month, right? Or you have a relationship with someone who was born in this particular month. Parent, significant other, child, however it works. Right? This is not a complete translation, I'm afraid. It's not 100% word for word, but it's close enough. And the two texts that we're going to look at one is called the Beit Yaakov, the house of Jacob, and obviously the author's name is Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov Lehner, I can be really smart again here, 1828 to 1878. He is the son of Rabbi Mordechai Yosef Lehner, who was the founder of the dynasty, and he wrote volumes and volumes. And I've done, I think, a sort of okay job of translating it. And I'm looking back and looking at it, I see that there is some stuff that is not spelled out here and not translated. So I'm going to read from the Hebrew, and hopefully you should be able to follow on in the English. All of them, and there are probably about a half a dozen of the founders of the Hasidic movements that talk about this. There are many, 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 many more Hasidic rabbis that you can read. But the ones that deal with these things are probably 5 or 6 of the most. Okay, so starting at the bottom of the page here, we're reading from the Beit Yaakov, and the first thing he does is he is quoting you from the Sefer Yetzirah, which you can get as an English book, and it's all in chapter 5, very, very small little book, and this is the source of pretty much everything to do with the power of the month. So the terminology is very peculiar and it's very precise, and we're going to try and make a little bit of sense out of it with some help from the second Rabbi of Ishbitz. Okay? So it starts like this. God enthroned the letter Yud over action. So there are 5 things that the Sefer Yetzirah connects with each of the months. And we're talking about a time before there was time at all. Right? This is how, in this particular chapter, this is how God made the world. Yeah, it's just on the one English one with the picture on it. And if you want to follow the Hebrew, you're very welcome to. And hopefully, if you give the Hebrew language a little bit of time, it does get easier. It really does. So the time frame that we're looking at is essentially a period of time before there was such a thing as time, right? Right? And which means you're always on time even when you're late, right? All of this transcends time. You're okay with Hebrew, sir? Reading a little bit of Hebrew, would you like the original of this, or the translation, or none of the above?
Take the original.
Absolutely. We get people who come to these classes who can do no Hebrew at all, and we get people who come with an enormous background in all of this information. So the quotation is always from the Sefer Yetzirah, and it's generally from one particular version of that, being a book that was not in general circulation for a very long time. There are a couple of different versions. We are looking mostly at the version of the text which is found in the commentary of the Gaon of Vilna, the Gra. That is the one that Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan uses here, not Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, that's somebody else altogether, right? There are other versions, and some of the great rabbis will be talking about how to reconcile the differences. The differences come in what is the main action, the thing of the month, and then what is the tribe that connects with the month. Okay? So here we have God before anything was created at all. There's no such thing as time, right? This is not a sort of thing we can easily understand. But it's a time before time. And God crowned and enthroned the letter Yud over action. Yud, you're going to see, means wisdom. Yud is the smallest letter. It is a point. It is seed. It is thought. It is wisdom. And this is placed as a king over physical action. The kashar lo keter, tied a crown and bound them together. This is for all the months of the year. There is something of the body, in this case action, doing things, as opposed to hiluch, which would be movement and moving forward, physical actions that are always guided by and ruled by wisdom. And not only is the crown put on the head, the crown of the letter Yud put on the head of wisdom, it is tied there. And the two of them are tzaraf, right? They are welded together, they are bound together, so they can never be separated. We're looking at a partnership of something to do with the body, something to do with you, and a letter of the Hebrew alphabet that means something, that has a lot of significance and references, that are not going to be able to be pulled apart. And this is always going to be a source of inspiration and value, right? So God takes this combination, the letter Yud and action, and creates with them Virgo, the constellation Virgo in the universe, right? So that which we see as something up there in the heavens that looks like the shape of a woman. And the rabbis here will usually refer to this as Isha, as a woman, but we do have to say Betula. I'm okay saying virgin here, right? None of you are going to be too insulted by the word, I hope. When you're into this, the guys can giggle at these things, women, of course, laugh at us laughing at these things. We have to try and be a little bit sensitive, but the major discussions of all of this stuff does revolve around terminology of intimacy, right? So God made this constellation, and what that means is what it represents, the power of the Betula, and it's not going to be the very Christian image of purity and innocence, but maybe it will be a little bit as well. Elul Bashana, the month of Elul, and we're going to see that the word Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, or Aleph Lamed Lamed, actually means something. All right, again, work on your Hebrew, but we're just going to open up a dictionary and take a look. The month Elul has meaning. The names are originally, of course, Babylonian and Persian, but in practical terms, we're going to get something out of this. And then Yad Smol, the left hand, B'nefesh Zachar Unekeva, the left hand in the soul of both male and female. Your soul has a left hand. I didn't know that until I saw this. How come your soul has a left hand, right? Or maybe it means in the body, maybe nefesh means the physical body. But generally the word nefesh is soul, spirit, right? So that's the list of 5 things. The letter Yud, Maaseh, action, the constellation, Betula, Elul, the name of the month, and then Yad Small, the left hand. That's what we have from the Sefer Yetzirah in and of itself. Now what Rabbi Yaakov of Ishbitz is going to do is he's going to try and explain this, because that's all there is. The Sefer Yetzirah goes on now to the next month. Obviously, there's a lot to be learned here. And this is where I think there is the most value for anyone who wants to tap into the powers that God has placed in time itself. If you want to be able to connect with and to manipulate and to use the programming that God made and the code that God wrote for planning and working the universe, then this is where you start. This is where you start. Right? One of the more complex things that we did in the last few sessions is Hashem Hasholet, the arrangement of God's name. We're on the top of the second page of today's handout. Right? We had this whole issue where God's name has 4 letters in Hebrew, and each of the months of the year has a different permutation. There are 2 hays, and there are some sources that in fact say the 2 hays are different, but generally most of the authorities are saying the 2 hays are the same, and there are 12 permutations, 1 for every month of the year. And then the name that connects with the month connects with a particular verse in the Bible. Right? We went through this in the last couple of sessions. It is a verse in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 25, that says, "And it will be for our merit that we keep to observe all these commandments before the Lord our God as he has commanded us." The words that are actually included here is utzedakah tihiyeh lanu. Tzedakah is generally a gift, something that is given to you because the giver just wants to give. Right? You have a tzedakah box, you want to help poor people, you put money in the tzedakah box, we collect enough, we give it away. Tzedakah tihiyeh lanu, I think here really means is that God gives you a gift of credit for the mitzvot. That's what I think it is. You're very welcome, of course, to disagree with me. But where he's taking this and where the next piece we're looking at is going to take this, I think is God is always going to judge you favorably no matter how badly you perform on any objective scale of doing mitzvot. God is going to look at you with tzedakah. He's going to have a good, happy view of you. Accentuate the positive, ignore the negative completely. So, what happens in the month of Elul? And this is something we learned before in the last 1 or 2 of the last sessions. Inyan Chodesh Elul, what happens in the month of Elul? What's the natural feeling that people have? Niresh adat niktan bo. Now, katnut, smallness of knowledge, smallness of the mind, is a specific Zohar term. And I don't think he's using that here. I think it's our mind declines. Okay, that's not bad. We feel lower. We feel smaller. Right? You don't generally say that today in English. I feel small, meaning I don't have much to me.
How about feeling insignificant?
Insignificant?
Or if we're talking about the dot, which is translated as knowledge, we realize how little we know.
What he's actually saying, I'm going to read the complete sentence in Hebrew. Inyan Chodesh Elul, the whole thing about this month of Elul, Nireh she'adat niktan bo lefishu sof hashana. Right? So we've got to sort of tease out exactly what the meaning is from the entire sentence. It's the end of the year, and our mind doesn't work quite so well. We're at a point where, if you remember the last couple of sessions, the things that we've been looking at, we've been going through a year and we've gone through 11 months where we've tried to do lots of good things. We focus on a different thing every month, and most of us have not done quite so well. And we lower ourselves in our estimation. I'm really not much good. I had these 11 things I was supposed to do, and maybe I managed to do 2 of them half as well as I should have, right? And you feel low about yourself. You don't feel so good. Thus, this month is called Elul, Milishon Aliyah, the tail, right? You come to live in Israel, you go on Aliyah with an ayin. That means you're going up to live here. But Aliyah with an aleph is a tail. It's a biblical Hebrew word. I'm not sure we use it in contemporary Hebrew at all. How do you say the cat's
This
tail?
is the fat tail of
The fat
sheep.
tail of the sheep, right? Shehi b'tachlit harichuk meharosh. The aliyah, the tail of the sheep, right? And some breeds of sheep do have these big fatty tails. That is as far away as you can get from the head, right? Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the year when we're filled with zeal and energy and everything is wonderful and everything is possible, and we have maybe a week or 2 of doing everything right. By the time 11 and a half months have passed, we're this big fat flabby tail, and we're out of energy, we're out of juice. V'chein ha'ma'aseh hi b'hitrachakut mida'at. Right? Again, we're dealing with words that we know have meanings and nuances and very specific meanings in the Zohar set of terminology. But here, the focus of the month is ma'aseh, is action, which is very far away from intellect. Right? If we're down to trudging along to go to a Beis Medrash to go learn something, we're certainly not up there in the intellectual heights and the real acknowledgement and understanding of what's going on. Why? Ki hadat v'machshava krovim l'tzurat adam. Your real form, your ultimate form, what you really are, is your mind and your intellect. And the actions that you do are quite far away from that. We're looking at a very, very intellectual way of looking at things. And here, in all of this, God is showing us ki ma'aseh hamitzvot, all the physical actions that people do, he me'omek ha'chochmah, they come from the depths of wisdom. Ki yud moreh al chochmah. The letter yud always refers to, alludes to, and means wisdom. This is why the yud rules over the action. Right? The very first couple of words there. God put wisdom, intellect in charge of action. So even if you are dragging yourself out to go to the Beis Medrash, or to go daven with a minyan, or to go visit some sick person in hospital, you are working there with your intellect at the highest level, even if your mind is not fully engaged, even if you are so asleep in the morning that no amount of coffee can help you, right? You're always doing things at the best and the highest level. This is so Ishbitz, this is so much the teachings of this particular branch of Chassidut, and many others, and some others too, that you always get an A. You always get an A for your intellectual involvement. Okay? And this is, of course, from the Tikkunei Zohar, and he gives you the quotation here. V'zeu tzedakah tihiyeh lanu. And this is what the verse connected with this month means. Tzedakah, it will be an act of tzedakah on behalf of God, or on the part of God, for us. That God judges us incredibly favorably. God lets us off the hook. If I'm doing the particular mitzvah and I am totally asleep at the wheel, literally, God still counts as if my mind is fully engaged, because my actions cannot exist without the intellect being behind it. Okay, here's the virgin bit. We can't ignore it. This is what the Virgo sign refers to. A heart that is closed up like a virgin. It's a quotation from the Gemara in Bava Batra, 12b, if you want to go look it up. It's an unusual source, and it's going to take a little bit of focus to try and figure it out. Amar Rav Huna Berei de Rav Yoshua. One of the rabbis said, someone who regularly drinks wine, even if his heart, his mind, is closed up like a virgin, wine will wake him up, open up his heart, and clear out space for understanding to go in. That's the Gemara there with the Perush, with the commentary of Rashi. Understanding or trying to understand a verse in the book of Zechariah, right? Book of Zechariah, Zechariah, one of them really, really interesting of the prophets. It's a line there that they're trying to explain. I think what it's saying is that if you choose to close yourself off to wisdom or to the ways of God, the wine of wisdom will make a space and an entranceway for itself into your closed mind and heart. I think. That I'm getting from Steinsaltz, from Rabbi Steinsaltz's edition of the Talmud, that a virgin chooses to be closed off to a certain thing. Nonetheless, there is a whole reproductive set of organs inside that metaphorically, if you lift the whole thing out of the physical body picture, the wisdom can get in. The intellect, the thought, the passion can get itself in there. I think. That's about as good as I can get in terms of explaining the Betula terminology here. That you can close yourself off from Torah. You can say, I'm not interested in Jewish wisdom and learning. And you can put up a barrier, right? A virgin will say, I will never go near a man in my entire life. But with this stuff, you cannot protect yourself. You cannot close yourself off. That Torah, that God's wisdom, God's love, passion for life, all of these things will enter in to your closed mind. And that's I think fits in reasonably well. Okay? Yad small, left hand, is as betachlit harichuk mida'at. Right? There are plenty of people who are left-handed, so this is not intended as an insult. The left hand is the farthest from the mind. I'm not entirely sure how that works out, but my left hand is a little bit less under control of my mind than my right hand.
They say that right-handed people think with their left lobe, and left-handed people think with their right lobe.
Okay.
I think it has to do with the putting on the film. You do.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's what I was going to say in a minute. We're going to get to that one in a minute. But in this, yeah. So maybe the mind that's here connects to over here. Okay. I took neuroscience once in graduate school. It was a long time ago. I can't write with my left hand, right? No matter how hard I try. My late father could do that. He had the knack of being able to use a screwdriver and a hammer and things in both hands, and write with both hands. I can't do everything I want with my left hand. It's less under control. And v'zeh shnitzavinu le'niach tefillin b'yad small. This is why we put our tefillin on the left hand, opposite the heart. right? Those of us who are right-handed put our tefillin on our left hand because it is the connection to the emotion. Maybe that's the nuance that we're trying to bring in here. That the left hand connects with emotion, with feeling, with the heart, rather than with the brain, with cold, calculated thought. Okay? All right. Text number 2
Oh, okay.
makes a certain amount of sense.
No, I brought up to fill in the example. I didn't read ahead.
Yeah, the tefillin here are on your left hand, which connect to your heart, and the feelings and the emotions are on this side. Okay.
Your mind has to control your arm to. Right?
Yeah, so you need your right hand, which is more in control, to wrap them onto your left hand and bring your emotions under control.
The mitzvah is done with the right hand.
Mitzvah is actually done with the right hand. Exactly. You've got to be a good Vulcan. Your logic has to be in control. Well, you are different. And, left-handed people are substantially different. Okay. We're going to go back a generation, and the Mea Shilach doesn't address the issues of... He doesn't address the issues of the astrology and the constellation stuff directly. So we have to look around in a couple of different places to find spots where he has something that is relevant and relative to all of this, right? And the column on the right, where it says number 2, Mea Shilach, volume 2, this is explaining to us how it happens that the tribes of Israel all have a specific focus to them. And he's going to go even further and say each tribe has its own mitzvah. There's a special mitzvah that is associated with each of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Not just that, not only that, in each area of Eretz Israel, there's out of the 613. So to travel the land, to be part of the land also, there's certain mitzvahs that are part of particular areas in each tribe as well.
Mm-hmm. It's cool stuff. It's cool stuff. What he doesn't actually do is spell out what the mitzvah of each tribe is. You got to deduce it, right? We're dealing with a book that was written, after the guy who said it all died, and the students put together their best recollections and their distillation of what he said, as opposed to a transcript of everything, right? You look at the Likutei Torah of the Lubavitcher Rebbe today. How many volumes is this? I don't know. 50 volumes? I have no idea. Enormous amount. It's been on sale recently. It's a huge amount of volumes. And people sat and committed this stuff to memory. Here we don't have that. Right? So the right-hand column, and it's about halfway down where it says Mea Shilach, he's connecting two parshas. This is from Leviticus 19, chapter 1. God said to Moses, tell the people, Kedoshim Tihiyu, you shall be holy. And then you've got a list of mitzvot to do. And he says this is the 7th parsha in the book of Leviticus, the 7th Torah reading of the year, of the book in the course of the year. And this connects with and parallels Parshat Vayetze, which starts with Genesis chapter 28, verse 10, which gives the list of the children born to Jacob. So the progenitors of the tribes, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, etc., are born Genesis 28, 29, 30. And these chapters, being part of the 7th reading of Genesis, parallel the list of mitzvot in Leviticus 19, which is also the seventh of the Torah readings. Okay? We got to put this into relatively good English. As a result of all the spiritual purifications and physical actions of the patriarch, souls were born. In other words, they didn't just get married and then have children, which is the picture that we see. And we do see that the children of Jacob and his 4 wives are given names by their mothers. Right? The mothers give them names, and the names are specific: Reuben, Shimon, etc., etc. Here we're saying something much more profound, that the child, the soul of Reuven, Shimon, etc., their souls came into the world as a result of birurim, of purifications, of spiritual activities of their father Jacob. Right? And thus we see that our ancestor Jacob worked hard on himself in many, many areas, and the outcome each time was the birth of one of the founders of the tribes. And when the child was actually born, this proved that God agreed with whatever Jacob was doing. You got to think about this. Whatever part of the soul or the body that Jacob refined brought about the birth of a tribe, which we are taking as a character or an archetype that proved to Jacob that he was on the right track.
So then how come it comes out to be 12? Like, why not 9, 8?
There are certain numbers that are just part of the way things are made up in this world. The tribes and the months are basically the line up with the 12 letters of the alphabet that do not have alternate forms. Right? That's the earlier chapters in Sefer Yetzirah. You take away the letters that are double forms, like a bet and a vet, right? A chaf and a kaf, a pei and a fei. They form a category by themselves. You take away the letters that have a final form, right? And you eventually end up at 12. And that's something that's been around since before God created the world. And
That's the building block.
Yeah, why 613 commandments? Why 600,000 souls? Ultimately, you come to the point where you have to say, yeah, this is it. And I can't get a better reason. I can't get any reason. And any reason that is given is going to be one that's grafted on it from afterwards. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're still in the right-hand column in the Hebrew. So if the children of Jacob are born, the soul comes into the world as a result of spiritual purifications and rising in the spiritual chain and ladder of things that Jacob does. He says then, Yesh mitzvah pratit l'chol shevet. There is a personal, an individual mitzvah for each of the tribes of Israel, which means there's going to be a personal and individual mitzvah for each of the months of the year as well. There's a mitzvah of the month of Elul, and we're going to try and pull out what he means by that and what it is. In this particular issue, tzarich shemira yoter mikol hapratim. You've got to be more careful. You need more care and attention towards this particular mitzvah, whatever it happens to be. Right? So now he's going to give us a little bit of somewhat circular reasoning if you want to do an analysis of the logic of the whole thing. Okay. Which is going to take us actually on to the second column, left-hand column on the Hebrew section. Yeah, I've just cut out a little bit here. We want to actually come to an end and a conclusion, right, at some point. We're in Genesis 49. First volume of the Meshilach. Genesis 49 is, as I'm sure you all know, the blessing that Jacob gives to his children before they die. And the one he gives to the tribe of Gad, which associates with the month of Elul, is this weird line. Gad gedud yegudenu, v'hu yagud akev. I know what a gedud is. Right? If you go to the street here called Gedud HaIvri, it's the Hebrew battalion, right? Named after the whatever unit this was in the Second World War, in the British Army, I believe it was, or maybe it was the American Army. I haven't a clue. But a Gedud is a troop, is a battalion, a unit of the army. So Gad, the tribe, a troop will troop out from him, and he will troop to the heel. Right? Doesn't make no sense at all. Right? Until you start pulling it apart. Again, same line. The 12 tribes, God has given or v'chayim, she'ein achad domeh lechavero. Each tribe, and thus every month, has its light and its life energy that is not the same as any of the other tribes. Right? Because from this or to this, all his energies are there. Yeah, everyone has to do all the mitzvot. But there is one that in each tribe shines more light with a capital letter L than others. And this is a sort of incidental line, is why there are so many arguments among Jews. Right? We all come from different sources and different tribes. Okay, I got it. In the tribe of Gad, they have Midat Yisurin. God placed the aspect of suffering. Gizeh HaShevet, people who have the tribe of Gad mindset, say that it is impossible to connect with Torah, that you can only truly learn the lessons of Torah through suffering. You're going to see how he gets this, and it's not exactly from the outset, but it's from reading backwards into it. Gad people say, Elul people say, it's got to hurt or I'm not going to learn it. Right? Some people are visual learners, they have to be shown how to do it. I have to write something out in order for it to go into my head. But the Gad mentality says, I've got to suffer, otherwise I'm not going to learn it. Right? And generally speaking, someone who endures a great deal of pain and suffering isn't very happy. Ve'enu kol kach b'tzavta. This is a great word. And if you are constantly suffering pain and discomfort, you are not going to be with people. A tzevet is a team today. But tzavta is a word that these rabbis use particularly to talk about companionship of other people. If you constantly have migraine headaches, you're not going to be very sociable. And if the pain and the difficulties never go away, you'll never develop any group of friends that you spend any amount of time with. Thus, Jacob gave the blessing to Gad that they should have simcha, joy, v'tzavta, and companionship and groups of friends. And what he blessed them is they should have hitchabrut, they should have connections with other people. V'yebahem gidudim, and they should have battalions and battalions, troops and loads of people with them. Right? Legions of people organized by him. V'hu yad cave. And what does that mean? He will troop at the heel. Ultimately, Gad type people, Elul type people, who think that it's gotta hurt, it's gotta feel bad. I can't really learn this unless I have to pay a price for it. They will ultimately come. Bizman sheyitztarech likabetzet Yisrael. That when the time comes to gather all the Jewish people together, Ekev meaning the heel in the end of time. Exactly. The footsteps, the heel tread of the Messiah coming. Then he is the one who will bring together and tie together all the Jewish people. And from him and from them will come all types of simcha, all types of joy, because Elijah is, of course, from the tribe of Gad, right? Which connects with Eliyahu as well. The destiny of the tribe of Gad type of personality is pain, suffering, isolation, right? He only pulls this out from reading back and saying, Jacob blessed Gad with joy, with connection, with happiness. I see no other source for it than that. Why do you give a blessing to someone to be happy? Because you think they're sad. Why do you give a blessing to someone to have lots of friends? Because they're a loner by nature or by circumstances, right? It's in the world of the way of thinking of Gad and the month of Elul that we have the blessing of friends who can get real joy directly from us. The suffering, the loneliness, these are the sources of binding people together with true happiness. Some people are just naturally full of life and love, and they can't wait to connect with other people. And some of us are a little bit different. We have to go through our darkness and our losses and our illnesses or whatever it happens to be to be able to share joy and to unite people, right? And Gad is the tribe that does this. It's the last tribe. It's the one who brings everyone together in the end of days. And the messianic element is very strong there. And Eliyahu, Hagil Adi, is from the tribe of Gad, as we are told in the Midrash. And he makes an aguda, a collection of people brought all together, right? Taking us from aliyah, the tail end, people who have not got their mind fully invested in it, but have gone off the boil in terms of happiness and focus. What's the mitzvah of the tribe of Gad? The mitzvah has to be probably not one of the 613 mitzvot, or maybe it is. Share joy. Exactly. That is one of the Taryag mitzvot. Which number, according to?
Not necessarily number, but there's a machlokas whether or not it applies to everybody at all times, or it's only for the Hagim.
Right. But the specific mitzvah here, and this is something that we get to in the next generation, in Reb Tzadok HaKohen, that is not entirely easy to wrap your head around, but there is a mitzvah in the sense that we use the word mitzvah, not one of the 613 commandments that you have got to do in your life that can potentially override one of the actual mitzvot. So that's, a totally different discussion for another day. But the tribe, the month, the individual has a purpose a mitzvah with a small letter M in the sense that we generally use it, that is of overriding and overarching predominance, which is not necessarily a great English sentence, but you got to do that above and beyond and before you even do the regular mitzvahs. What's your purpose in life, right? Which is one of the questions that we all ask ourselves all the time. What am I supposed to be doing here on this earth? Why was I born? Why was I put here? Why did things work out this way and not that way? And these are methods of finding answers to that question. Because ultimately we do want to know what our purpose is. And I don't want to think that I'm just like everybody else and I have this whole list of mitzvahs that I do all the Torah just like everybody else and that's enough. I'd like to think that I'm unique and that there is a reason for me being here as I am. And in the month of Elul, this is the sort of focus that we have. What am I going to take out of the negative stuff in my life? I had a period of my life where I had, a few serious illnesses. What do I get out of that? What do I get out of the hospital experience and the real physical pain that I had at those times? Just to pick on myself, I'm not going to pick on anybody else's examples. And this is the focus and the thought that is there in this month, that we have the ability to take difficulties, pain, failure, things like rejection, right, which is probably the thing that hurts the most for all of us, and use that as an energy to do something good. And at the very least, get a support group together for people who have been rejected by, or people who have spent time in hospital, or people who have, or just spend time with friends, right? And that is about all that I have to say on the month of Elul here. If this stuff does interest you, let me know. We'll continue next time with similar stuff from the same sources and maybe one or two others, and we'll go through some of the months of the year. Tishrei is one that's going to be coming up, so we might want to get ready for that one. Reasonably clear, I hope. Okay.
Amazing.
It's good stuff, huh? It's good stuff. And if you're born in Elul, that is obviously something you should be looking at. But again, the basic...
So what do you see here? There's not just the command, not just the obligation to connect, but there's simcha seems where you should be during Elul as opposed to depressed.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, maybe the natural...
We're being told to be b'simcha.
Right. The natural, the psychological mood would be in the depression direction, but you're told the opposite. You have to reach for the stars.
Over and over again, all of the great Hasidic masters that write about this, and we're talking about the earlier generations, all of them are saying it's a double-edged sword. There is stuff here that describes what God has put out there in the month. If you let your emotions control you, you can be really, really depressed. You can be really, really anxious. But you can take control of it. You have the ability to flip it around and use the good side of it and not let the negative side of it push you around or pull you along with the current.
So this is sort of the bipolar aspect of Elul and Tishrei, because Elul is like the depressive, and then Tishrei is like the manic in the sense that it's filled with Sukkot and Yom Kippur and the New Year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's there's a lot packed into to 1 month.
Oh yeah, there's an enormous amount packed into these months.
And as we were talking last time, Yom Kippur is a Yom Tov, it's the time of Simcha.
Right.
So you come up at a low point in Elul and immediately get rocketed to Tishrei.
Right, but these particular texts that we're looking at tell us that Elul should be a high point. That we should be looking at the intimacy with God as being like a wedding night, right? That it's the first time, it's the best time, it's the absolute perfect moment. It's always like that as far as God is concerned. It's only that you've let yourself be dragged down by whatever it is you're dealing with in life. The interesting thing that comes back is going back into the month of Av, right, which we're just sort of coming to an end to. When is God most approachable by human beings? The month of Elul, right? And we have this very well-known statement, God is out in the fields, God is doing a tour of the world, and anyone who wants can come up to God and have a chat, right? Some of the Hasidic masters take this, I'm pretty sure it's Bnei Sassachar, and pulls this even closer. Av is the month when you have the greatest opportunity to connect with God. Because God is out there in the trenches fighting the enemy who's coming to destroy the temple and the nation. And you're out there, you're in the trench, you're on the front line with God. You can say absolutely anything at all, which would not be the case in Elul. You've got to have a little bit of respect, right? It's all about intimacy. It's all about the connection. It's all about God wanting to be with us and wanting the absolute best for us. But nonetheless, giving us the choice of ruining it for ourselves and being lazy.
So this Beit Yaakov Sefer and the Beit they are related?
Father and son. Me'er Shilach is the father of the Beis Yaakov. And his son is the Sodi Sharim, who is the one who reintroduced Techeles that only his followers and Breslovers accept. Right? He's the Bala Techeles.
So the Rhodes Rabbi comes from this?
Today they are called the Ishbitz Radzin, because at some point they moved to a place called Radzin. And then there's another of the sons that went to a place called Bishkevich. I have no idea how to correctly pronounce these names. That's the Neot Desha. He's the one who talks a little bit about meditation. And then you've got Reb Tzadok, who was one of the very well-known Talmidim of the Me'er Shilach. This is where my head naturally floats into.
And the Bnei Yissaschar was prior to...
Bnei Yissaschar is a bit earlier, yeah.
Because
Shama shir shir chadam